A few days ago, while dining outdoors, I witnessed an awkward moment. A passerby made a sharp, ironic remark about a nearby man's appearance. Heads turned. Suddenly, the man was the center of attention. That moment stayed with me because haven't we all been there? Criticized for how we look, what we wear, or simply for being different. On another day, I watched a friend hesitate over something that seemed small from the outside. She needed to ask her manager a couple of simple questions about something she hadn't fully understood. But to her, it felt enormous. She held back, afraid she'd seem unintelligent. Later, I replayed our conversation. Why did asking for help feel so risky to her? Have we been taught that speaking up makes us a burden? Every time we hesitate to ask a question or raise our hand, we tell ourselves it was just a moment of fear. But that fear keeps showing up, again and again, in countless interactions. Maybe those aren't isolated moments. Maybe they're clues, signals of something deeper. A fear of judgment so many of us carry. But where does that fear come from? More importantly, how do we move past it? It often begins in childhood. Many of us were told we were too loud, or that we could share our opinions once we grew up and earned our own money. Until then, our job was simple: obey. In school, we were taught to learn by memorizing. Questions were allowed, but few dared to ask. One naive answer could cost you laughter or shame. So we learned silence was safer. Invisibility could protect us. If you don't speak up, you can't be punished or mocked. So you stay quiet, because sometimes that feels like the only way to get by. Those early experiences don't just fade. Our subconscious registers them, even if we're unaware. And the emotions tied to those moments live in our bodies. The heaviness in our chest, the tightness in our stomach, the breath we hold when someone's watching. Over time, these patterns leave a clear message. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe what I have to say doesn't matter. And when we hear that message often enough, we start to believe that being outgoing isn't safe. It invites discomfort. That belief shapes the choices we make as adults. Think about all the chances we've let slip away because of it. Those moments at social gatherings when we stayed silent. Not out of indifference, but to avoid embarrassment. And when someone confident and friendly approached, we shrank back, convinced we had nothing worthwhile to say. In those moments, fear spoke louder than our desire to connect. So we stayed quiet. But that reaction doesn't make us strange, it makes us human. Even the most privileged, those who seem to have it all, experience moments of doubt. Sometimes, a single negative comment on social media, lost in a sea of kind ones, can knock them off balance. Yes, we all carry a fear of criticism. But not all criticism is something to fear. Constructive feedback, especially when offered with love, is something to seek out. There are people in our lives who genuinely care, who want to see us grow, thrive, and show up as our best selves. Imagine a friend who sees you slouching, eyes cast down. They speak up not to embarrass you, but because they see your worth and want you to see it too. That's not judgment, it's a quiet act of devotion. Someone pausing their busy day to remind you. You matter, you're worth noticing. The opposite of constructive feedback is criticism for its own sake. It doesn't help, it simply reveals someone's need to feel superior. It shows us where they feel small inside and how they try to feel bigger by putting others down. That kind of feedback hurts more than we expect, not because it's true, but because it's meant to wound. Even after the moment passes, the feeling can stick with us. We replay it, question ourselves, and wonder if they were right. To protect ourselves from that kind of pain, we need to pause and ask, is this person truly trying to help me grow, or simply trying to make me feel small? We always have a choice. We can absorb their words and let them shape how we see ourselves. Or we can release them and protect our peace. Let's be honest, this is easier said than done. To respond with clarity, we first need to understand the source of the sting. Often, it's not about us at all. It's about what's unresolved in them, a deep-rooted insecurity, pain they've never processed, an aching need to feel important. But when we know our worth, their words lose power. A tiger isn't fazed by a house cat's harsh remarks. She doesn't shrink to soothe someone's comfort. She simply knows her strength. When others criticize or speak poorly about us, our instinct is often pain, frustration, hurt, even anger. But if we give ourselves space, if we step back from that first emotional wave, something surprising can happen. That pain can begin to shift into understanding. The sting can soften into forgiveness. Because people who tear others down often learned that behavior somewhere. Maybe they grew up in places where teasing was affection, sarcasm meant belonging, and harshness was the only way to feel heard. These reactions aren't always conscious, they're learned, passed down, shaped by what was normal in their world. And that's where compassion begins. So if someone throws something sharp your way, pause, breathe, smile. Look at them, not with judgment, but with understanding. And quietly remind yourself, I forgive them. That wasn't truly them speaking. It was their conditioning, echoing voices they never chose. Try it. It might sound simple, but it works. After that moment of compassion, you'll feel lighter, free from the weight of negativity. Sometimes, the fear doesn't come from criticism itself. It comes from the possibility of it. You rehearse a speech for days, know every word by heart. But as you step up, your palms begin to sweat and a wave of anxiety washes over you. Suddenly, your mind forgets everything it knew. This is your body's response, trying to shield you from a danger that hasn't arrived. It's not irrational, it's instinct. An instinct born from old moments of embarrassment, of laughter at our expense. But like all instincts, it can be retrained with practice, small acts of courage, and compassionate self-awareness. Here are some practical ways to handle the fear of rejection. Let's start with journaling. When we name the feeling, we begin to create distance from it. It becomes something we observe, not something that controls us. It becomes an object, not an identity. Start small. Just one line a day, my fear showed up as. You'll be surprised how often the act of writing softens what once felt overwhelming. The second thing we can do is visualize success. Imagine yourself in a safe, comfortable space, speaking with confidence and calm. People listen with interest, not judgment. Picture yourself smiling, and they smile back. Feel the warmth of being surrounded by people who like and respect you. And most importantly, take a moment to realize you handled the conversation with ease and finesse, and nothing fell apart. Keep visualizing as often as possible. Before a meeting, before a job interview, before stepping on stage. This isn't fantasy, it's mental rehearsal. The mind resists what feels unfamiliar. But the more we imagine ourselves succeeding, the more familiar success becomes. And when something feels familiar, it no longer feels threatening. Over time, that mental rehearsal turns fear into readiness. So when the moment arrives, your body isn't panicked, it's prepared. Additionally, talk with friends who truly see you, the ones who listen without doubt or skepticism. These moments may seem small, but they rewrite old scripts of silence. They remind your nervous system, what you have to say isn't just tolerated, it's genuinely heard. And every time you're met with presence instead of rejection, fear begins to melt away. Finally, when you speak, slow down. Let your words land. Not rushed, not hurried, especially when you're afraid you'll be interrupted. If that happens often, remind yourself, you deserve space to finish your thoughts. And if someone won't respect that, maybe they don't deserve your energy. Silence isn't awkward. It's strength. Let your words breathe before you move on. Because being heard isn't something others grant you. It's a right you deserve. Always. If this spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need the reminder. that their voice matters, their presence is enough, and their fear doesn't define them. Thank you for watching.